You're listening to Sarah Hagan Backstage, with interviews and insights from years inside the music industry. Join Sarah as she talks with masters of their crafts, finding out what makes them tick both inside and outside of the music business. This week, Sarah talks with Gunnar Olsen.
Welcome to Sarah Hagan Backstage. Our guest today, Gunnar Olsen, is a studio and touring musician who is known for his unique way of merging acoustic drum sounds with electronic sounds and effects. Today, we will talk to Gunnar about the change in perspective he has had over the past year, his musical evolution, and what he is up to now, including his gig with Puscifer. Stay tuned for some really great advice and insights. Hey, Gunnar, welcome to Sarah Hagan Backstage. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to see you. Great to hear your voice. I'm happy to be here. I feel pretty honored. It's still pretty new, so I've been listening, and I was very excited to hear from you, and kind of hoping I'd hear from you, and so thank you.
Yay! I'm so happy to hear that. I've been having a blast with these podcasts, and you were someone who I just, of course, wanted to get on the show as soon as possible. And then with everything you have going on right now, it was just really good timing. So yeah, cannot wait to get into all of that stuff. But tell me how you've been. How have you been through the whole, virus and quarantine and all of that?
Yeah, it's been, everybody has a different story. Obviously, I've been well. My wife is from Maine, from Portland, Maine. And we live in Brooklyn, New York. Mm-hmm. And I think it was about July 1st. We said, you know what, let's just go up and see her parents for a while. Like, we'll be safe about it. We'll just kind of get out of the city for a couple weeks. I think we planned to be there for 2 weeks. And we kind of never came back. I also grew up in New York City. So just the idea and concept that I was essentially living in the woods now, totally different, obviously. And, the people are really nice up there. There's so much fewer people up there. Mm-hmm. So it was just it felt a little safer up there. There was a few restaurants we could go to still. But honestly, it was just really great to be with her family. We've been staying with her mom and dad. Mm-hmm. And Rick and Drew, and I can't thank them enough for just their hospitality. And, my wife works in advertising, so she was used to going to the office all the time, and I'm a musician, so I'm used to being out at night or touring. And when quarantine happened, we were kind of stuck in this little apartment in Brooklyn. And we're usually busy enough where you don't realize how ridiculously small an apartment we live in. Mm-hmm. And so just being able to kind of stretch out, and they have a house, and we had a little more space, and having people to interact with, because we weren't seeing anybody anymore. Right. You need a human contact, right? Yeah. So just even having 2 more people to kind of just have dinner with, and, have some go on hikes and walks. And so it was actually kind of the real kind of high, the bright spot of all this was spending time in this beautiful area that I maybe get to go to 1 week a year, because just how everything works out, and to spend 8 months in this really beautiful, just totally different environment than New York has been really just kind of life-changing, to be honest. So yeah, I've been up in Maine for a lot of this, which also meant I didn't have a drum set.
I was going to ask that, how you were, if you were kind of just taking a break from everyday playing kind of thing while you were connecting with nature and writing it out.
It was working out that I was coming back to New York usually once a month for about a week at a time, and kind of trying to schedule stuff, because I do have a studio where I can record remotely for people. Mm-hmm. So I was able to kind of work things out where I'd come back for a week or 2 at a time. But I think my longest stretch not coming back was 8 weeks, which was, I don't know, in some ways it's kind of cool. There's so many things as a drummer that I think a lot of us kind of build up these little kind of tics, or I don't know, it's almost like this diarrhea of just like these things you do. And I feel like it kind of like reset my brain in some ways. So when I was playing again, it felt a little more like special and like, oh man, like this is really fun.
That is cool. A little bit of a reset, change in focus or perspective kind of thing.
But I will say one of the longer stretches of not playing was before this thing I'm sure we'll talk about out in LA, where I was playing with Puscifer, and I had to it really was tough. It was a tough gig in general, just learning all these songs, and they're all over the place. But my mechanics and technique was just it just felt like I hadn't been to the gym in like 2 months and now had to run a marathon. So
right, you have to get the muscle memory back. You wouldn't have had any idea watching that show. And you have to dive into that.
Yeah, sure.
Too, because it's so fantastic.
Oh,
but
thanks.
I totally understand that, and I also understand the perspective change that has happened over this time. Realizing what's important in life, who is important. Reprioritizing. I think it's been I've used the word reset, but I think it's been a bit of a reset for pretty much everyone who's been affected, in this, whether their jobs or their industry or their family life. Definitely a reconnection with nature. I mean, the summer time frame was so nice for all of us because just getting out and getting fresh air. A lot of us who live in the colder temperatures in the winter. It was like, oh my gosh, fresh air, I spent a lot of time gardening and cool. So I love that. I love seeing your posts from Maine because initially I was like, what is Gunnar doing up in Maine? What's happening?
Yeah. I was kind of wondering how much I should post about it because I was like, I don't want to lose the street cred of being this Brooklyn musician. But I wasn't really missing out on a lot of, it was the thing I liked about it was, I think as kind of a freelance full-time musician, there's always that, what's my next gig going to be? Like there's the mechanics of, okay, the amount of work I need to live and be able to afford to live in New York. But then there's also the stuff you're hoping to do. And once all that stuff kind of went away and there wasn't this, I'm on Instagram way too much. And you see all these amazing drummers getting these great gigs. And, there's a bit of a competitive feeling with a lot of that stuff. And I feel like once all that went away and I wasn't really worried, my dad's a Broadway musician and unfortunately, the thing I got from him a bit is he just kind of said yes to every gig that came his way.
Right.
And I think that's a good way to live, but it was the kind of thing where I feel like I was always worried about, I might get a call for this. So I can't really leave New York for too long to go on vacation with my wife or stuff like that, which the pandemic time, with everything kind of stopped, it's put things into a bigger perspective where it's like, oh, I don't actually want to play gigs all the time. I do want to see nature and I do want to spend time with family.
Right.
And kind of with all that stuff just on pause, it's been, in some ways, I don't know, it's made me a little less anxious. Anxious about other things, of course, but
right, of course.
Just having that time to feel like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about being available for something. I can just go to Maine for 6 months. When could I ever do that? So that's kind of been nice.
I totally understand that perspective, and in the same boat where work was an incredible priority in my life, and of course still it is a priority in my life. But it definitely, this time period helped me understand that it is okay to take a little time off. It's okay to have downtime, and the remote work thing has been incredibly eye-opening and refreshing. That yes, these things can be done from home. Zoom calls, these calls that we're doing right now, we can connect and it have meaningful connection, even if we're not together. I can't wait until we're all together again and we have things going on that again. but I do think that, you know, it's definitely been eye-opening, and I'm so glad that you got that perspective too.
Yeah, it's been wild.
And let's go back a little bit and talk about growing up right in the heart of New York with music in your family. You said your dad is a Broadway musician. How was that? Did you start playing music really young, and was it the drums or was it another instrument?
I didn't start too young. I mean, the benefit of living, I grew up right basically in Times Square. My dad was a Broadway musician, so he was really close to we lived really close to that whole world. And so that, you know, you have all these opportunities available to you, but the hard thing about it for me is just, and a lot of musicians, it's really hard to play music in an apartment in New York City. Mm-hmm. So my uncle's a drummer, and I remember thinking, oh, it would be really fun to have a drum set, but like, how would we even do that? You know?
Right.
And when my parents got divorced, my dad ended up moving to this apartment building that had like 2 other drummers in the building. Wow. Which, I don't know, it feels kind of crazy now, but it meant that it was a possibility. I think that was kind of telling me, oh, maybe this could happen. Mm-hmm. And but I don't think I started playing till junior high. So I was probably maybe 12 or 13. And he wouldn't let me get a drum set. He said he'd let me start with a drum pad. Mm-hmm. And if I took lessons and kind of kept up with it, then I'd get a snare drum. And then so we slowly built a kit as I kind of, as I showed that I was serious about it, because he didn't want to get me a drum set and I'm just some loud kid banging on it and not working on it. Mm-hmm. And pretty much right as I got the full kit is right when Nevermind came out by Nirvana. Yes. And it was just like perfect timing, mm-hmm. It was like, oh, I like playing the drums, and like, it was just like something about that band with a lot of us just like clicked. And it was the first time I never really thought I want to be a musician, but it was like, oh wait, these guys don't look that different from me. Mm-hmm. And these songs are really cool. And like that Dave Grohl guy looks really cool when he plays the drums. Yeah. So I'm just going to set up my drums really high. And I basically just like set up a mirror and just would play along to their records every night and just literally just mimic the way he looked. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah,
I can picture this. Did you have long hair at the time?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Right? I could just picture, because this is like the early 90s, right?
Yep. Right, yeah, 92, I think, when that record came out. And it changed my life. Really
That's amazing. And I think that like speaks to the importance of being able to see yourself in certain situations, and that kind of inspiring you to move forward with that. Mm-hmm. And I think, we talk about women in music and just diversity. And I think like showing that, a woman is in this position, or in your case, before the grunge era, it wasn't there. Like we didn't see people who were drumming and playing that type of music who maybe looked like us in your case, so I love that. Love it. Yeah. So great. So you started playing, you were able to have a spot, have a kit, right?
I was able to have a spot. Eventually, my dad moved out to Queens, got remarried, and his wife at the time was like, he can't, we had a drum set up in the basement, and she just was kind of like, no, this is like
not happening.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, hey, I get it. Like drums are loud. Like I'm still surprised how loud drums still are, like, mm-hmm. And this is before like low volume cymbals and all that stuff. I had a pad set, but so my dad was able to get me a practice space. He knew some guys that had a space, and I had access to it a couple of times a week. And that was great, because that was when I started meeting kind of kids my age who wanted to like jam. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, I have a practice space. There's amps and drums and microphones. And so then before I knew it, I was like starting to play music with other people, which I kind of never thought that was going to happen. I don't know. I just never, it really like, Sarah, I just like kind of, I didn't really have time to think about it all. It was like, oh, I'm playing the drums. Oh, I have this thing. Oh, you want to jam? Oh, now I have a band, just like stuff like that. And, my first band was like a punk ska band, which I feel like a lot of us, it was early musical endeavors. And yeah, we would just play like our favorite, like Operation Ivy songs and Green Day songs and write some crappy songs. We got to play at like CBGB's in New York. And
that's cool.
Yeah, just like, oh, we're the bitter end, like we're playing a real gig. And I went to school for music. In New York, there's a music and arts high school called LaGuardia. So I was going there for high school and kind of playing in orchestra and the jazz band. And yeah, it was before I knew it, it was time to go to college. And I can go to this conservatory, SUNY Purchase, and keep playing the drums. It was just, I just feel like I never really had time to think, what am I going to do? For a living. And I think the fact that my dad's a musician, my mom's an artist, I never had to talk with them like, well, what are you going to do for a career? How are you going to pay the bills? Like I saw firsthand, like, this is how you can make a living.
That it's possible. Right.
And so my main goal was just keep playing the drums and not have a job. And, after college, ended up just jumping in a van with some buddies, and we just kind of toured, and that led to meeting more people and more bands. And I've literally never had time to think about it. It just kind of keeps happening. So
yeah, that's pretty fantastic.
It is. I'm really lucky, and it's been amazing.
And speaking of touring too, I mean, you've had, I actually first saw you play. You were at South by Southwest.
Yes.
With Big Data, right?
Yep.
And I stood behind you. I got to stand behind and watch you play. And I was just like, this is great. And you guys had a couple songs on the radio maybe at that point. So
yeah, that was my friend Alan, who's essentially AKA Big Data. We've known each other since high school, and we went to different high schools, but we've known each other forever. And I knew he liked making music, and I think he worked in music publishing at the time. And yeah, him and his friend Dan wrote this song Dangerous that kind of snuck its way onto alternative radio. And I remember him calling me and saying, hey, I have this band. And I'd heard the song, I'd heard the 4 songs they had put out at the time. And, he was like, oh, I think this might be a real band. Like, I think I might be quitting my job and doing this all the time. Do you want to play drums? And there's going to be some festivals. And like, yeah, sure. And I think we had just imagined it'd be like kind of 10 shows or something. And it turned out to be like 2 years of my life. And, it was just wild because we grew up together, and we kind of put together the band with a bunch of like friends we knew. It was, I would say, like top 2 or 3 bands I've been in where just the chemistry, and it's just everyone's having fun. There's no drama.
That's so important.
And I think because we all kind of thought it would be this, not a flash in the pan, but because we didn't take it too seriously, we just had a lot of fun. And it was so unlike any other band I had played with at that time, where everything else I've been a part of until then, you're playing shows all the time. You're trying to like climb this ladder to get like on Spotify playlists and management. And they started with a hit song before they had a band. So it was like kind of from the get-go, we were playing to a lot of people, and people were excited to hear at least that song that they knew. Right. So I think that was our first South by Southwest. And
yeah, it was a really cool show. It was on the top of a Whole Foods, if I remember right, and it was pouring rain.
Yeah, I think it rained almost that whole week, which was like such a bummer because like I flew my wife out, and we're thinking like, oh, we'll get tacos every day and like go on walk. It was just like raining the whole time.
It was super rainy. I called it South by Southwet because it was so rainy. So, but I just remember seeing you play and being like, this guy, like there's something
thanks.
about you. Yeah, for sure. And then I just loved seeing everything that you did from there on, because you did more touring, you did a bunch of studio work. When you sent me the Bruce Springsteen, you know, the I think it was a video maybe of you playing. It was the first thing that I saw, and I was just like, what is going on? This is so cool. I mean, because it was like a little bit of a departure, I think, from what I just knew you as playing. It was super cool.
Yeah, that's kind of been, I will say, like, that's been the most fun part of this kind of journey of the last, I guess, 5 to 7 years, is I've managed to kind of keep playing with projects that I feel like are completely different than the project before. And, you know, I grew up listening to Bruce Springsteen. I grew up listening to the Talking Heads. I grew up listening to Paul Simon, you know, and then Nirvana. So I've always wanted to play all styles of music. And I've been, you know, when I step back and kind of look at the artists I've played with in the last 5 years, I feel pretty proud that it's not just kind of one thing.
Absolutely.
And not that there's anything wrong with that. And I feel like if you try to do a little of too many things at once, you fall into that, maybe like you might go down that lane of not being able to do anything quite as well. I don't know. It's like the jack of all trades, master of none, or whatever that phrase is. But yeah, I've been pretty fortunate to kind of play with some crazy people the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was before or after Bruce, but you had did some recording with Miley Cyrus as well, right?
Yeah, that was through my buddy Andrew Wyatt, who is the singer of Miike Snow, and also does a lot of production stuff. And he did a bunch of stuff with Miley. The stuff I did for her and with him was for they did an Elton John kind of tribute record where they got all these people like Queens of the Stone Age and like all these really cool bands to do a cover of Elton. And they did a pop version and they did a country version. And Miley was the only artist that had a song on both.
Oh, wow. And
Andrew did both those songs. And kind of in typical fashion, he called me like, can you come to the studio right now? And that's honestly been, I could, you know, the Springsteen thing, this Miley thing have all been day of calls, frantic, like, I need a drummer right now and you're the person I'm calling. And if I didn't answer the phone, they'd probably call somebody else. And I think, you know, which kind of explains my paranoia.
Right. I was just thinking that.
Not wanting to go to Maine for 2 weeks because what if I miss a call? Because it's happened. And you know what? You know, I've missed a few things because of touring, and you know, you can't clone yourself, and you just gotta hope that those opportunities will keep coming back. But yeah, there's time like that where I think, man, if I didn't answer the phone, if you know, when my buddy called me about the Springsteen thing, I had a rehearsal that night and I'm like, oh, I probably can't make it today, because he didn't tell me who it was for. He said, hey, can you come to Jersey? Because it's such a secretive thing. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, man, I got this rehearsal. Maybe could we do it like next week? He's like, you need to rent a car and come right. Like he was like trying so hard to not say the words. And then eventually just said, it's for the boss. Like, get here. I'm like, oh, like, why didn't we just tell me?
I do remember you telling me that story when that happened, because I was like, how did this come about? Just super cool. And then,
well, the point of those stories is that, you know, hey, there's a million drummers out there. There's a short Rolodex for the people that, for the drummers, those kind of people call. But I was able to kind of get in there on a lark. My buddy had been working with Springsteen for years and kind of vouched for me. And Springsteen wasn't supposed to be there when I recorded for him.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like, they figured I'd maybe come in, play some parts. They'd either keep them or they'd use them as demo drums for some famous drummer to play. And it just happened that he showed up when I was tracking, unannounced. And, you know, I just happened to be in that room and he wanted to try some ideas out. And I think the thing that I had going for me is that I just stepped up to the plate and I just did the best I could. You know, you like keep your head down, you don't act like a dick. And, you know, it's not like I was playing something better than somebody else could. It was just being prepared for that moment. And that's the challenging part, is how can you mentally be prepared if you get this call from insert any famous person.
Right.
You know, it's a lot of it has to do with the people you know and your attitude, and just kind of, can you make it work, you know? Right.
So preparation and personality come into play for sure.
For sure. At least in my case, you know?
Yeah. And then are they, you know, going to call you back to do more things? If you show them that you're prepared and, you know, that you fit, you gel with them as far as, you know, your personality goes, you get those calls back and you make
100%.
Those relationships for the future.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic. And, you know, we have to talk about your solo instrumental album because,
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it really just showcases you and your style of playing so well. The sound effects that you use kind of throughout the album fascinate me. I mean, you know, I'm into sound, and, you know, just different aspects of music. And I feel like, you know, percussion wise, it was really cool. The hand claps and the finger snaps. And I'm just wondering, like, did you do all of that? Did you program all of those? How did you make that happen?
So, yeah, a lot of the work I do as a musician to kind of pay the bills is I make a lot of audio library music and I produce a lot of electronic music. So starting around 2013, I started making a lot of music with a production company I have called Track Tribe. And we kind of got a gig to make a bunch of music for YouTube's audio library. And the idea was that they wanted to have just a bunch of songs in a library, bunch of different genres that people could use in their videos, kind of targeted towards their content creators. And so I think we made like 400 songs in a year, like just, I think 8 different genres. Like I was making I was like looking up tutorials, like how to make dubstep songs. And like in my, you know, like I had made music on my computer kind of as a hobby, but now all of a sudden it was going to be my main job for the year when I wasn't touring. And I just kind of I had been making music kind of as a hobby here and there. And, you know, the thing I learned from making these 400 songs with a group of guys is that I was able to kind of finish a bunch of things really quickly. And that I think a lot as musicians, as artists, that can be a daunting thing, is like, when is something finished? Or that thought, oh, this isn't good enough. Like I need to re-record the drums before I ever put this out. Or there's so many excuses I feel like we make for ourselves. And so that whole process of putting all this music out and releasing it with, you know, on the YouTube audio library, just kind of, I learned from that where, you know what, I want to put out an EP, I want to have my name on it. And it was just kind of like, I gave myself a deadline. I'm like, by this date, I'm going to put it on TuneCore and put it on iTunes and Spotify. So to answer your question, I really like cutting up things. Like I use Ableton Live, and I just love messing around with chopping things up. And essentially, I like to record, you know, maybe a keyboard or hand clap, I don't know, whatever it is, record things for like maybe 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And then I'll kind of go through and find the moments I like and try to make like a loop out of it or make some kind of hook to it. So I think like the thing you were mentioning, like finger snaps and hand claps, that song is there's a song on my EP called When Will Today Be Tomorrow? And there's a bunch of like electronic programming, a lot of real drums. But I thought like it would be really cool to have, there's something about like a finger snap or like a clap. It's this organic sound that really cuts and like your ear kind of recognizes it so quickly. And I just thought that the displacement between all these like really highly electronic sounds and big recorded drums. It would just like, I don't know, I just thought it'd be kind of interesting. I remember there's a early James Blake EP, and there's some songs on there that's just like a piano and one hand clap every like 5 bars or something. And just the starkness really like stood out to me. And I think I might've been listening to that a lot at the time, but yeah, I just, you know, I like rhythm, and
Yes.
I think just I might have even just like clapped that into like my computer speakers or something, just as like a placeholder.
Yeah.
And then sometimes those kind of found sounds can really mesh really well with just like all these like super recorded, highly electronic sounds. So yeah, I would say like as an artist, as a, you know, solo musician, I love texture. So I'm always looking for just different sounds that will complement each other, you know, like, like you said, like a finger snap versus a kick drum or.
Right. And I think you do this incredible job of taking organic sounds and merging them with electronic sounds, whether it's acoustic drums, whether it's actually like an organic hand clap sound, and then making them work with electronic sounds that, in a way that when I listened to that album, I immediately was drawn to that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And again, I'm super into sound and rhythm as well.
Yeah.
But like, you know, hearing there was a song, Bulletproof Tiger, where I could hear like jingling, and I want to know like, what is that? What?
Yeah, I think that jingle is it's literally like I recorded a tambourine into a Memory Man pedal. I'm also I'm really into like pedal boards, and like I like using like guitar pedals for things they're not really meant to be used with. So I think I was running a tambourine into like a loop pedal, and then on the Memory Man pedal just like had like the wet dry up, and it ended up like, I think it was as simple as just like a, you know, quarter note tambourine, but it started having this crazy long tail that was then kind of chasing itself. And it turned, like a tambourine can be kind of a harsh instrument if you just hit it once, but it turned into this kind of like longer sound. And that was, I wrote the whole song around that tambourine loop.
I can understand totally why. Yeah. It's a pretty sound. It's really nice, like pleasing to the ear. Cool. And yeah, so talk a little bit about that whole thing with like the guitar pedal, you know, kind of hybrid drumming thing. I know you also, we're going to link a video because you have this really incredible instructional video about how you use your Chaos pad.
Oh yeah.
It's so good. So we'll
thanks.
link that in here. Yeah. But yeah, doing those loops and kind of using the guitar pedal is not only super cool and unique, but it's led to you being sought after for gigs as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I was in a band with my friend Gray called Nights on Earth, and he had the Line 6 DL4. It's a green guitar pedal, but it has this loop function, and it has a button on it where you can essentially, if you're, I think it's made for guitars. So if you're playing a guitar riff and you loop it and you press this button, it'll double the speed of it. So now the loop is twice as fast, and it makes the pitch go up. And then if you record it with that switch engaged, it pitches the whole thing down an octave. And I remember like at rehearsal, I think we were on a break, and I put a microphone into it, and it was like feeding back and sounding awful. But I started like I was like, oh, I should what happens if I use this on my drums? And it took a long time to figure out, how can I do this without feedback or it sounding kind of awful? And yeah, I got one of those Yamaha EAD 10 mics when they came out. And what's really great about that mic, it's a stereo mic, and it clips onto your kick drum, and it's kind of right in the center of where all the action is happening. And it has a left and right 1/4 inch out. So it's just so easy to go into pedals. And because it's kind of capturing the whole kit, there's not this like, oh, where should I put this mic so it captures what I'm doing. It just kind of, it takes that out of the equation, which I really like.
That's great.
And so I just started running that through distortion pedals, and I had this Chaos pad, which I think was made for DJs. If people look it up online, the fun thing about it is it's got a touch sensor, so you can kind of move your finger on this like touchpad and change the like kind of wet dry and the amount of effects. It's got delays and distortion, and it's a crazy device. And I started running my drums through it, and what's really cool about it is you can set a BPM on it, so if you make a loop, it stays perfectly in time, which, you know, doesn't need to happen if you're having fun with a loop pedal. But since I'm making so much electronic music, it was really great to have this device that would keep things pretty in check. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just kind of started making videos with it, and yeah, it's funny. I'm seeing a lot of drummers starting to explore kind of pedals and effects on their drums. I think it's kind of going to be the next wave.
The next thing.
Yeah. So some of the reason I put that video out is I just kind of wanted to be like, hey, I've been doing this for a second, and this is some cool stuff you can do with. And then if anybody keeps using the Chaos pad, at least I can say, well, at least I have this video out. I'm not copying this person.
Right. That's a good point. And just for people who are looking that up too, it's Chaos with a K, right? KAO.
SS. Yeah, it's made by Korg, and no endorsement there. That's who makes it.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. I want people to be able to find it too, and like I said, we'll link that because I hadn't ever seen that video, and you sent it to me, and I was watching it. Like, this is incredibly interesting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and unique. And then, you know, those are the kinds of things that, you know, I want to hear about how you got the call to be the drummer in Puscifer.
Yeah, I think some of these videos we're talking about, if you go on my Instagram, Gun Buns, and I always joke to my wife, I think if I actually thought one day I would be using this as a professional page, I might have picked a different name. But I also don't take myself too seriously, so it's kind of perfect.
It's perfect, and it has to stay. Everybody knows. Oh,
it's gonna stay. It's staying. Yeah. But yeah, Matt Mitchell from Puscifer reached out to me. I want to say, like, maybe a few weeks into the pandemic, so maybe late March or April of last year. And just kind of I think he sent a message to like my website email. So it was like, it came, you know, and stuff, people DM me all the time, but this came in through like a submission form on my email.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, it just said Matt Mitchell, Puscifer. And hey, do you want to reach out, and would you be interested in talking? And this is like a month into all this madness. And I'm thinking, oh, sure. But what could we even talk about? And they basically, I talked to him and Karina, female vocalist in the band, and they had tours planned for this year, for 2021. Mm-hmm. And they were curious if I would be available, if I wanted to maybe send them some videos of me playing some songs of theirs. But yeah, I think Matt found me on Instagram, and the record they were about to put out had a bunch of electronics and live drums, but it was a little more electronic than their records before. Mm-hmm. And I think he saw how I was utilizing kind of maybe pedals or just kind of combining real sounds with electronic sounds, and thought it might be a cool fit for their record Existential Reckoning, which they're going to put out. Now, mind you, most of that record is Sarah Jones playing. Mm-hmm. But it actually worked out that after we talked, I sent him some video, and they're like, cool, you sound great. He sent me a song to play. He sent me 2 songs to play on, and I was able to record remotely and end up on the record, which was kind of exciting, because it was a kind of thing where I feel like if we weren't in this remote world, they might have just found somebody in LA to do it. But because we had been talking, because he had seen I was doing remote work, it was the first time where I feel like the fact that I could do drums remotely benefited me and helped me get on the record. And yeah, so it's been crazy just to like I've talked about it with friends of mine. I somehow, you know, to get a relatively high profile gig during this pandemic is just kind of unbelievable. And, you know, the credit to that band is that they realized touring is going to be on hold for a while. So let's make some really cool live streams. And we've done 2 of them now. And, you know, the first one we did was for the record that I played on a little bit called Existential Reckoning. And we filmed that out in the desert in Arizona at this kind of big, crazy, this place called Arco Santi, this crazy architecture. It's kind of, it's almost like a commune out in the middle of the desert. Like people live there, you can stay there. They build these crazy bells there. You can go and take tours of it. And we basically shut the whole place down for a week and just went out there and recorded. We played the whole record, which was, that was a pretty big challenge because like I said, the record is kind of half electronics and half real drums, but we knew we didn't really want to just have me playing on like Roland SPDSs or pads for it. And so it was kind of, that was the hardest part of that gig was figuring out like, how do we want to do this song? Do we want to trigger things? Do we want to leave stuff on tracks, but I'll play on an accompanying kind of textured instrument? And yeah, it was maybe the most challenging gig I've had to this date. Just,
I can imagine that. And plus, you know, being like right in the middle of the pandemic too, when you guys did that, right? It was kind of.
Yeah. The first one I went out there in September and we filmed in October. We went out there in September and filmed, and I think we were done by October, but this was like, I mean, that was the first time I flew on a plane during all this. And it was, California was getting kind of bad. And you know, I'd been up in Maine kind of just like in the middle of nowhere being pretty safe. So it was like, you know, there was all these protocols we had to set up. Like, how do I get there safely? How do we keep the band safe during it? And then cut to, we just did another live stream that we filmed in February. And just the differences between now there's these whole, you know, COVID protocol specialists. And, you know, the first time we were kind of winging it and like we were getting tested and just kind of like, it was just kind of uncharted territory and just the difference in 6 months.
Right.
You know, we're working with Danny Wimner Presents, and they have like, there's like these specialists and like they have all these things you do. And just seeing how that has changed, you know, it was kind of fascinating because, you know, now we're getting tested like every other day, and there's certain days like you can't go on set, and not that it wasn't like that the first time, but things are so kind of figured out now.
Right. There's more process to it, and and procedures to follow.
Yeah, which like is you know, you hear like, oh, they're gonna be testing us more and doing this, and it's like, sure, yeah, whatever we need to do. And it just, it keeps everyone really safe. And we kind of build this big pod, and, you know, knock on wood, both of the live streams we've done, everyone stayed safe and nobody got sick.
That's so great.
So, yeah.
And this last one in LA, right? It was at the Mayan Theater, which is, I mean, I've never been there before. It looks like an incredible place. Had you been there before?
Yeah, I played there in 2000. I was in a band called The Exit. That was kind of like my first like band. And we ended up going on tour with Muse, kind of when they were like breaking into the US. So like they were pretty huge around the world, but they were, you know, they had a record called Absolution that kind of put them on the map in the US. So it was their Absolution tour, and we played the Mayan Theater with them. And this was like the first time I'd ever played like a proper theater or like a venue in LA. So it always stuck in my mind as like this mythical place. Like we played I think we played 2 nights there, and, you know, it's probably like a 2,500 capacity. So it's big, not super big, but like my band started playing like basements. So it was pretty huge to play the Mayan. And so when I found out we were going to record this in the Mayan, I was so excited just to, you know, nostalgically go back, but like be in the band that's like kind of headlining, even though it's not a real show. It was really, it was awesome to play there again.
That's so great. And it was shot so well, you know, kudos to the crew, because it was so great. You know, and thanks. Seeing you play your kit with all the sound effects, all the you know, the noise makers and things that you're playing, is so cool. Like any percussionist, it's just like, you know, you have to see this, because watching you navigate those songs, which are complicated, you know. There are so many songs I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a tough one.
It's definitely the hardest. It's definitely the hardest music I've ever learned, in the sense where I don't make charts. I listen to something long enough that it's just really ingrained in my mind. And I think the play counts for all these last two records are like in the 30s and 40s. Like, just, I would just spend like 2 or 3 weeks. That's all I do, is just listen over and over. I would try to listen to the songs for maybe a week or so before I'm even thinking like, what are the drum parts? You know, just let the music kind of, just try to soak it in and not just think, okay, what are the kick and snares doing? And that's the other part, is that band is very specifically random. So there's always like a drum fill or like a drum beat that repeats 2 times, but then for 4 times it does this way. And it's madness. And, you know, I know a lot of that is Matt Mitchell, who found me, is a lot of how he mixes the records, he produces them. So a lot of it is how he cuts up the drums and kind of turns them into something different. And it's a huge challenge. And you know, a lot of really talented drummers have played for that band. Right. And so I'm very aware of the lineage of who I've kind of like followed, and I don't take it lightly, you know, and they've played with like the best drummers in the world. So it's,
yeah, absolutely. But I think that your style of playing is just so perfect for that. And the way, again, that you have the electronics and the acoustic and the acoustic that mimic electronic and all of that. And one question I had for you was, you know, when listening to the music, because for this second show, you were having to like listen to those and put your take on it as far as what instruments you were going to use to make those sounds, right?
Right. So so just to clarify, the 2 live streams we've done have been a full record at a time. So the first one we did, Existential Reckoning, I played on that one a little bit. So I had a bit of a leg up, but there was also a lot of electronic stuff. So this record, Money Shot, which we just did a live stream for, is very much a rock and roll drum record. Right. And, you know, the difference was the first live stream I did, no one had ever heard those songs. So I was kind of the first drummer to perform them live and get to put my spin on it. The record we just did, they did a tour for that record in 2015. So the fans like know that record. So the challenge of that is doing the songs justice, right? I don't want to come in there and, well, first off, they wouldn't let me just do what I want to do, in the sense where you need to honor the drum parts that are there. That, like, I'm sure there's a bunch of drummers watching the live stream that want to air drum, and like, I don't want to, like, you know, there's like, it's kind of like you listen to the songs, you zero in, like, what are the things that have to be done the same way every time, and then finding those parts for a little my personality to come out. And a lot of that has, you know, a lot of that just kind of evolved after rehearsing for 3 weeks. You know, Matt maybe saying, oh, I like that different thing you're doing, or let's try to stick to like very verbatim thing there. And I would say in general, I feel like there's not 2 types of drummers, but there's drummers that maybe, you know, I feel like there's some drummers, if you stacked up 10 of their live shows, it would be like they play the same thing every time. You know, like and a lot of drummers pride themselves on that. Like, oh, I'm always doing that one fill and this and that.
Yeah.
And I feel like at least in the last 5 to 10 years, as I've kind of figured out a bit of my voice, is I like to find the things I'm going to do every night and then know that this is the section I'm going to kind of be inspired by the moment. Like, how am I feeling? Like, that might mean tonight on tour, it's going to be a little busier, or tonight I might like lay out and have it just be the kick drum. You can't quite do that with a live stream because you're playing, you're basically going to film a song maybe 5 times. They're going to pick the audio of what they like, but they also might use the video from 5 different takes because, oh, there's a great shot of Karina on this one. And so that's been kind of a new thing. Like, it's this new world of you're kind of recording because you want to sound great. You're also performing, but then it's also almost like a music video because they're going to use footage of maybe not the exact time you played it. So it was definitely a challenge of, I really want to be present and in the music, but I need to kind of play the same thing. So if they use a different shot, it syncs up. It's weird. It's a head trip, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine, but it was so cool to see you. You know, there were just so many great shots and of you.
Yeah, it looked incredible. It was. I mean, I hadn't seen any of it until I watched it with the general public, and just like, oh, cool.
Yeah, and the way that it was put together, you know, it's performance art, you know, which Maynard is known for.
100%.
So it was, I mean, it must have been cool to be part of a production like that, you know, that kind of like comes out of the brain of Maynard James Keenan, you know?
Yeah, he's, I feel really fortunate to be kind of in his, I feel like this is the band where he gets to really just like try anything he wants out. And, you know, he likes to laugh. He likes to have a good time. I feel like this is like the zanier of his groups. But when it comes to like performing and like getting things right, like it's like, that's all that matters, is trying your hardest and just like really doing it. You know, like, yeah, there's going to be like a skit here and there where he's wearing a wig or something, but when we're performing, like it's no joke. It's like, we're really doing this. And I mean, he's a legend. It's always surreal being in the room with him, you know, like yeah, he brought it. I thought he sang so great, and it was just like it's, you know, it's like it's one of those voices we grew up with. You know, I watched so much MTV as a kid, and I've played with a few artists now where it's like the second he hits like a note where he's kind of going for it, it's just like this nostalgic part of me is like, it's like a pinch me moment. It's like, like I grew up on that voice, like similar with Springsteen. You know, it's just like these moments where I don't really know what else to say about it. It's just like, I just try not to like mess up and get thrown off the gig. That's all I'm trying to do, is just hang out a little longer and maybe crack a joke and make them laugh. And that always kind of keeps you in an extra day, I feel like. So
absolutely. Yeah. But I agree with you too. You know, that voice. And I feel like Puscifer is a place for, like you said, for him to be more experimental.
Yeah.
You know, there are more songs where you hear the deeper part of his voice, I think. But you know, it's just really cool to see you on those live streams, and I can't wait till you guys, you know, get around and tour and all of that as well. It's like a you know, performance art every night kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of brings me back to like the idea of this, like, you know, before we started, we were kind of talking about like, what is the future of the live stream? And that's the thing I miss the most, is being able to do something in the moment, meaning live, like a normal traditional live thing. And it's just, it's the moment. And it doesn't, if you're like going for something and you're all in, it's okay if it's maybe not the cleanest fill you've ever played, but if you're playing it with intention,
right?
And that's what the moment is bringing out of you, and that's what I really miss, because I feel like with a live stream, you know, you want it to sound good, you want it to look good, so it's a little more reserved, and
Right.
you have no audience to feed off of.
Right. That energy isn't coming back at you.
I mean, I will say the closest thing on the live stream, like we filmed a few shots with, I was literally surrounded by like 20 huge wrestlers.
Yes.
I mean, they were like right in my face. And those like 3 songs, I actually was feeding off of their energy, and it was something I hadn't felt obviously since maybe last February, is that feeling of like, oh, if I hit the drums harder, they're going to probably headbang harder. And so that was just I kind of forgot that feeling, because we had been rehearsing for 3 weeks, and, I've been feeling pretty good. And then now we're doing these takes where like, now I'm playing like this, and we're like, between each take, I'm like, oh my God, wow, I'm really performing. Okay, we got to do 2 more of these to get all the shots. I'm like, if this was a live show, we would just move on to the next song. And now I got like, all right, here we go. Like, because the next take might be the one that they use. So it's it's a fun challenge. And like I said, not playing the drums for 8 weeks before that, I was a little
thrown right into it, right?
I've been eating a lot of lobster rolls, and let's say, it's like the freshman 15, but maybe it's the COVID 15.
Yes, I get it totally.
Yeah, so.
I think that's a common theme.
Yeah.
And I think that the live stream thing is pretty amazing for the fact that you kind of get to share the music with so many people who might not be able to make it to a live show, right?
Yeah.
Who might not be able to see it. A good example of that is the PASIC convention, which is Percussive Arts Convention, that happens every November. This past November, it was virtual, and normally it's in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah.
And it's, the people who attend don't often come from other countries to attend, but this virtual PASIC was attended by people from like 31 different countries. Yeah. So I feel like it's opening music up wider to people, but yes, like the in-person feeling, I think there's going to be a hybrid, moving forward. There will be a lot of virtual shows that maybe we didn't think were possible before, but now it's been proven possible. And then also, the in-person shows where you're really like shoulder to shoulder with someone next to you who's also super into the music, and then the musicians can feel that. And, I don't think that's ever going away.
I think the thing that maybe they'll figure this out, and maybe there's some live streams that have done this. I think the part that as a viewer I miss is like, sometimes I just want to watch the drummer for the whole song, or sometimes like the bassist is doing something and I'm just like, you're like, oh, look at that. And the thing that I think is hard about the live stream is you're being shown what you're being shown. And luckily, I would say with the ones we've done, I mean, the production value is incredible. So, I mean, it ends up feeling more like a concert film, like a Live at Pompeii.
Right.
I mean, like the Live at Pompeii, Pink Floyd, and Stop Making Sense by Talking Heads. I think those are kind of the benchmarks for a concert film. And I know those were kind of benchmarks for the directors and, Maynard and Matt, who kind of put together a lot of the looks for it. But yeah, I think if they can find a way to make live streams where you can just really like focus on anybody, like that would be really cool. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if people have done that yet, but if not, I want to claim stake to it and somehow make some money off of it.
You should talk to someone about that, because that's a really great idea where you could like pick from a few different camera angles, right? Yeah. And you know what, too, thinking about that, just one shot that I loved was, I think it was really close to the end. There, Smoke and Mirrors, maybe, where it showed you with your gong, your rack of gongs behind you. That was incredibly cool. I mean, a lot of drummers have a giant gong behind them. You have this rack of these small gongs of different tunes. Right? How did that come about? That was awesome.
So that was great, because that's the one song on the record that has no drums. So I just imagine, okay, this is the song that I'm not a part of. And I think we were like a week into rehearsals, and Matt said, "You want to do something on this one?" And I was like, "Well, yeah. I mean," and they said, "What if we got a bunch of tuned gongs?" And I was like, "I don't even know what that means, but sure." And so we basically got, you know, they're about the size of I don't know, like a rice bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And they're tuned just kind of chromatically. So it was a scale, I think in C or whatever key the song is in. And so when we got them, they're literally a gong with a little rope. There's no like stand for them. So when we got them, we kind of awkwardly put them on a bunch of mic stands, just kind of hung them. And then he was cool. He said, just start playing around on them. See if you can come up with like a part for the chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And after like a few hours of jamming, like came up with a part we all agreed on. And then my tech for the Puscifer stuff has been Jeremy Berman, who makes Q drums,
Mm-hmm.
who's I'm sure you guys know each other, and he's a world-class drum tech, drum builder, and great guy. We've known each other for years, and it was such a pleasure just like going out to sushi with him and like hanging out. And so he built the rack that we put the gongs on. So you'll see on the special, or I'll put pictures up eventually. He basically just like welded this piece of steel and just kind of found a way to mount them all in this really aesthetically pleasing way.
It's beautiful.
And yeah, it sounds great. And like when I was watching with my wife, she was like, "How did you learn how to play that?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I just kind of, I don't know." She like that was the one thing she was impressed by. I mean, she liked the show, but she was like, she could like, let alone I'm doing all these drum parts. She's like, "Yeah, but how did you learn how to play that?" Like, I don't know. I just kind of figure it out. And my favorite moment was, you know, Maynard walks in the first day we have it set up, and we're like, "Pretty cool, right? The gong tree." He goes, "I play in a band with Danny Carey." That's not a gong. You call that a gong? That's not a gong.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like, that sounds great. And yeah, Danny has that giant gong behind him with like, you know, it's designs on it sometimes, right? Artwork on it, and but no, this was like, it was just, I liked the difference, but you know, anyone can have a gong behind them, but look at this, like incredible.
It looked really cool. I thought it'd be really funny to take them all out and leave just one in the middle and just have it be like, it's really the anti-gong gong. You know, like I'm a big Alex Van Halen fan, and like all that footage of like him hitting it, like lighting it on fire, like just to like recreate that, but with this little like rice bowl gong. Tiny
gong with a giant gong mallet. You have to have
the mallet's bigger than the gong.
Right. I like this idea. You know, that's super cool though. The show, it was perfect. Everything about it was so great. You did an amazing
I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. And I have a feeling it'll I don't think it's going to go away forever. You know, I think it'll come, you know, I think it'll come back. They'll release it somehow, but it's the same with the other one too. They're too special to like just go away. I think they might kind of bring them back from time to time, and, you know, knock on wood, there's talks that we might do some more of their records in this kind of format. So
that's cool.
I don't know. Yeah. It's a all wait and see thing. You know, I'm kind of, I'm lower in the priority of like who knows what in that band, you know, so I'm just kind of happy to be involved, and it's been really, like I said, to end up playing with like some really serious musicians during all of this is just kind of mind blowing, and you know, I'm just so thankful, and it's like I could finally say, "Hey, look, my Instagram actually got me something."
Yeah, so that's incredible. I love that part about it too, because, you know, it's when we see people start coming up and playing and posting, it really does make a difference. People do notice it, especially if it's you know, if you have a really something that's unique about you, which you absolutely do. And I think that's the thing that I feel like, you know, I see a lot of drummers on Instagram, and I feel like that's emerging more. I feel like for years it was kind of like who could play the fastest chops and tag the most companies and show the most
free gear, even though they're paying artist prices, and this whole like weird posturing. But I feel like what I'm seeing a little bit more is people really like, I think because we were all of a sudden everybody had a home studio because that's all we could do.
Yeah.
So you see like everyone kind of has like, not everyone, like, but a lot of people like spend time like really curating the way their camera angle is looking, and they have like a cool plant or like, I don't know, something that like that's inviting to you when you're watching a video. And you know, I feel like a lot of drummers started making like a lot more music maybe for the first time or more of it. And so you have a lot more of like people like me, like releasing music, and it's not just about the drums, you know, it's, yeah, I feel like the personal expression of drummers is getting pretty interesting right now on Instagram. So
I agree. Absolutely. I think that, you know, people showing their unique abilities mixed in with kind of traditional drumming is becoming a thing. And what advice would you have for someone who's kind of coming up and looking to experiment with electronics? Is it just go for it, like trial and error kind of thing?
I think it's literally go for it, because there's so many things, like literally, like you can see like Mark Juliana's page, and he's messing around with electronics, and there's no shortage of like pedals, and even if you don't buy a pedal, if you can like, even if you just have GarageBand or Ableton, if you can go in there and mess with stuff, that's the thing I really love about electronics, is it's finding ways to take the drum set just kind of into further, just somewhere further. And for me, because I was making so much production music, I used to record the drums, bring it into Ableton, and then go in there and kind of mess with the sounds of it. And, you know, I thought, well, maybe I can cut out the middleman and make my drums sound processed in real time. And so, yeah, I think really just trying to like find your voice, and yeah, don't be afraid to try something other people aren't doing. I think a lot of people, I've definitely had that thought before, like, oh, am I allowed to do this? Is like, I don't know how to set up a mic properly. Like, is it okay if I do it like this? Maybe, maybe not. It might sound cool. It might sound awful, but yeah, you might be able to hear the ice cream truck out the window, by the way.
Oh my gosh. All the kids go running right to the ice cream truck.
I live right across from a park. And come springtime, like for like an hour a day, like the ice cream truck comes, and there's days where I'm just like, I feel like Mr. Wilson, because I'm just like, shut that thing up. It's so loud, and all the kids are screaming. I would
totally understand, Gunnar, if you were like running out the door to go grab an ice cream and come back.
That's not out of the question either.
Right. But no, I love what you just said there about, you know, just taking a risk and experimenting and seeing if it works or not. Does it work? Let's find out. Right. And you did that, and look where you are. So that's some great advice. And you're doing amazing things. I cannot wait to see what's next and where you are headed. And thank you so much today. I really appreciate you being a guest and sharing your experiences and your story. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks for having. I'm honored, because the short list of the people that I've listened to so far in your podcast are pretty impressive. So I feel honored to be in their presence. And like I said, it's nice just to, I haven't seen you in a few years. I feel like the last time I was supposed to see you, you were sick. And so,
yes. Yeah, I know. I think maybe it was right after one of the trade shows where we all come back like, you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
Ill. But yeah, no, it's so good to see you too. And I'm grateful that we got this time together, and we will see each other in person again soon. I know I keep saying that, but it's happening.
It's coming. Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gunnar. We will talk to you soon. And in the meantime, take care.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. Join us each Tuesday for new episodes of Sarah Hagan Backstage.